Good afternoon, Jay Ruderman, President of the Ruderman Family Foundation. Welcome to our Haaretz conference. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Judy. Nice to join you today.
Jay, there's been a lot of talk lately about finding some sort of silver lining in the coronavirus crisis. Do you believe there are any opportunities for the Jewish philanthropic world and for the Jewish organizational world in this crisis?
Well, I think traditionally Jewish organizations have come together around various crises, depending on, wars in Israel, natural disasters. I've certainly seen the Jewish community come together around this one to pool resources, to try to address the issue. I think we're not always clear. I mean, we're clear of what some of the immediate needs are, but we're not clear of what the long-term needs are. So it's a nice thing to do, and I applaud the Jewish community for doing it. I don't know how universally it spread through the Jewish community, but certainly some of the major foundations have stepped up and committed to addressing this crisis.
I want to talk to you now about Israel-diaspora relations, a subject I know is very dear to your heart. What the Ruderman Family Foundation does, in a way, is what organizations like Birthright and Masa do, but in the opposite direction. Right. They bring young American Jews and Jews from other parts of the diaspora to Israel, and whereas you bring Israeli delegations, young Israelis, to America for them to learn more about the American Jewish community. Because of the coronavirus crisis, such encounters, what we sometimes call mifkashim, are no longer really possible, at least for the foreseeable future. What do you propose be done to prevent a disconnect between Israel and the diaspora at times like these?
Well, some of what we've done, which have been trips for Israeli Knesset members to the United States to learn about the Jewish community, or journalists, I think those are on hold. We have a new Knesset. Until international travel opens up and there's much more travel between Israel and the United States, I think those are on hold. However, we continue to raise the issue through op-eds, through conferences such as this conference with Haaretz and the Sachnut and other partners. We have the only sponsored program at an Israeli university on the American Jewish community at the University of Haifa, so that is going strong. And the learning about the American Jewish community among Israelis who will be significant players in Israeli societies continues to go. I mean, we're continuing to try to think out of the box about how to continue the connection. A lot of it, I think, is a public discussion, especially with the new government in Israel, to keep this issue front and center. I mean, we've had some, articles in some of the major Israeli publications, and we'll continue to do that. Just to say that the American Jewish community, while it is diverse and different than Israeli society, it is a community that remains vitally important to the future of Israel's security.
As you just mentioned, Israel just formed a government last week after a very extended period of not having a functioning government. And we've just had Minister of Diaspora Affairs, Omer Yankelevich, speak here. I was wondering, if you were to be asked to advise her right now, what would you tell her should be her most important priority in her new job? And also, I was just wondering, what do you think of the fact that the government of Israel appointed a member of the ultra-Orthodox community as its liaison to the Jewish world?
Well, I think that these positions of appointing ministers is a very political position, and it's a way of holding the coalition together. I don't know her. I've never met her. I hope to meet her and hope to have a sit down with her either virtually or in person, someday soon. I think she has a vitally important ministry because she's connected to half the Jews who live outside of Israel. My biggest advice to her would be to listen and not to judge. You have many Jews in America and other parts of the world who observe and who identify many in a great deal differently than Israeli Jews. So I think that she should approach the position with an open mind. I've spoken out in the past, and I hope that when she selects a director general, she selects someone from Israeli society who has a deep understanding and a personal experience of living in the diaspora, since there are hundreds of thousands of Israelis who, have made Aliyah, who've lived for extended periods of time in the diaspora. And I think that unless you live in a community and for a long period of time, whether you're living in Israel or living in the diaspora, you don't really understand it. And I think that the biggest pitfall would be for a minister to sort of project internal Israeli positions onto the diaspora, because I think that there's going to be a disconnect there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's very important advice. Well, thank you very much, and I hope that for our next conference we can be doing this face-to-face.
That would be lovely. I think that's important. I think the connection between Israelis and American Jews, a lot of it can be done virtually, but there's nothing about like visiting Israel. And, not so long ago, only 20% of the American Jewish community had visited Israel. Now, with Birthright, you have over 80% of the American Jewish community visiting Israel. There's nothing like the experience of being there and experiencing the country firsthand. So I think until we get back to that, we have to be extremely creative at building the ties. If there's something special about being in Israel for a Jew who has any connection to their Judaism, and I think you lose that during a period like this. It's so easy to slip back into your normal life where you're very much absorbed into American society, and Israel, goes onto the back burner. So I'm hoping this thing will improve, that we'll have a virus, that life will return, that we'll travel, and we'll meet each other in person.
What is your projection? When will it happen?
I don't know. In America, we are in a period of flux right now. First of all, you live in a country which is a centralized country, and I think Israelis are more used to listening to the directives of the government. We essentially live in 50 different countries, and with this government, with the Trump administration, he's essentially turned over control to the states. So some states are cracking down. Some states, like Massachusetts, where I live, we've had terrible outbreaks. And some states are in a better condition. We're now in a position where we're sort of relaxing some of the standards. People are going out more with restrictions, but we don't know whether this is the start of moving beyond, or whether there'll be a second wave coming later in the summer or the fall. I think people have to be responsible, but you have to remember America is a country made up of all sorts of different people, and there's a lot of people who are focused on their individual rights and don't want the government to infringe upon their individual rights. So we're going to be in a period of a couple of weeks or months of a great deal of tension in the United States, and I just don't know how this is going to move forward.
Well, Jay, stay safe, stay well, and as I said before, I hope we get to see you soon in person here for our next conference.
Thank you. Thanks, Judy. Appreciate it.